What Ike Allen and Andy Anderson have created at AVAIYA is what the world needs.
Hello, AVAIYA family. I'm Andy Anderson. My partner Ike Allen and I are teachers, mentors, and the co-owners of AVAIYA University. AVAIYA is the creator of over 1,000 books, films, courses, teachings, and other supportive resources. Thank you, as always, for joining us. Our fellow teacher, Tracy Crossley, is with us today to talk about freedom from attachment. Tracy is a behavioral relationship expert, author, and podcast host who specializes in treating individuals with unhealthy life and relationship patterns. Tracy helps clients transform imposter syndrome, insecure attachment, negative belief systems, breaking the cycle of narcissistic damage, destructive self-talk, and more. She shows her clients how to permanently change the repetition of the unhealthy, unhappy, and unfulfilled cycles, both personally and professionally. Welcome back to AVAIYA, Tracy.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoy speaking with you. So really, thank you.
Yeah, great to see you again. And I love your topic today. Always intrigued by attachment. So let's first start about, right, how can people stop saying yes to breadcrumbs? Breadcrumbs, we know what this means as it relates to, right, toxic relationships, dating, that kind of stuff, but breadcrumbs also as it relates to work relationships.
It really comes down to self-worth. Everything always comes back to self-worth, because when you have value in yourself, you tend to stop doing these things. So just because you know in your mind, intellectually, yeah, this is not a good situation, I'm getting breadcrumbs, you have to look at, well, what is the fear that keeps me here? Because there's a fear, especially like in a work situation where I may as well stay with the devil I know rather than go somewhere else, and who knows what's going to happen. But that's fear. And so you have to look at, why do you have this fear? Like, what is driving it? I'm talking about inside of yourself. Like, you need to know your feelings that are behind it, because our feelings really are what control us. A lot of times you don't know it, but it really is. Like, if you think about, let's say you're in a bad job or in a bad relationship, and you sit there for a second and you go, how do I feel about it? You're probably going to feel heavy. You're probably going to feel anxiety. You're going to feel all sorts of negative feelings that are going to be really heavy and not make you want to do anything. And so it's about working toward the self-worth that's going to overcome those kind of feelings and allow you to do the things you want to do.
Mm-hmm. Yes, got it. And yeah, I'm so glad you bring up self-worth, because obviously that ties in with shame. And so many people have that low self-worth when they get into unhealthy codependent relationships. Let's also talk insecure attachment. So it's something we talk about a lot at AVAIYA, but why don't you give people just a little overview of what that means first, and then we'll kind of get a little deeper into it.
Sure. So in the late 60s, Dr. John Bowlby, I don't need to go into the whole thing, but he basically developed a theory of attachment theory. So what's come from that are, I would say, several iterations of what insecure attachment is. And so it starts when you're a child. It has to do with your conditioning. It has to do with how your parents relate to you or don't relate to you. And this doesn't just mean, oh, I was in an abusive situation. This means you could have had overprotective parents. You could have had, parents who gave you attention, took away attention. A lot of this, of course, is unconscious on the parent's part. So most parents aren't trying to, let's say, screw up their children. But what this does is it sets the stage for how you relate to other people, how you perceive love is given, attention is given, which to me, love and attention go together. And so this is where the cycle starts as a child, when you're, let's say, you get attention for things you're not expecting to, and you're getting attention for things that like you're going, okay, I just did something wrong, but I'm getting praise. Or I cleaned the whole house, and boy, maybe I'll get to go out with my friends, and then you don't, and you're punished. Like, just, that's all disorganized, right? So, and I'm talking, these are simple things. And of course, there's abuse and every kind of trauma and drama in between that sets you up this way. So when you're an adult, this is what you've learned to do. This is your conditioning. So you just bring it to adulthood. And, in my case, what I talk about is basically anxious, avoidant, and avoidant, because I feel like all the styles kind of break down to that, where you're either anxiously attached, you can't let go of somebody. There's a huge fear of loss. You have somebody who's anxious and avoidant, which is what I was. And you're basically doing this dance, right? You're either avoiding relationships or you're anxiously attached. You can't let go. And then you have the avoidant who avoids relationships, or avoids, I should say, any kind of intimacy. Although all styles avoid intimacy because when you are insecurely attached, you've never learned emotional intimacy.
Mm-hmm. And of all those that you just mentioned, what do you see when people are struggling with codependency? What do you see as the most predominant attachment style for those people?
I would say anxious attachment for sure, because you are so entwined with another person, and you believe that they are the answer, even if you, on the other hand, are angry about it, but that they're the answer to what ails you.
Right. And one thing that you talk about in your work that I'm very intrigued by, right, is that insecure attachment can be like a drug. Can you share a little bit more about what you mean by that?
Sure. I've had several clients that have shown up and been like, the sex is addicting. I cannot let go of this. And, it feels like a drug, because when that person goes away, because of course there's always high drama and high intensity in those situations, it is addicting. Because a person who has, let's say, an avoidant tendency, okay, you're going along in your life, you're working at your job, you supposedly look like you have a life and you're happy. And all of a sudden you meet somebody and you feel your whole world is turned upside down, right? And you get attached, anxiously attached. And then it's the sex, because you've never experienced emotional intimacy, like I said before. So your way of establishing intimacy is physically. So you physically feel that connection, and that you think is love. And that is where a lot of us get stuck. I've gotten stuck there, but it's really about looking at the intensity, the drama, and also the fear of loss, because that's what actually drives it. Because if you have a fear of loss, then it's like the best sex you've ever had. Then it's like, this is so meaningful because it's fleeting.
Mm-hmm. And so what would be the difference between someone who, how could they tell, right, if they're in this insecure attachment, sexual relationship versus someone who is just having an intimate, healthy relationship with someone?
So there's a lot that goes into that. A healthy relationship, first of all, you have, I don't want to say everything's balanced, because we're human beings and, let's face it, we're never altogether balanced, but there's not the high drama. So the high drama of where's the relationship at on a day-to-day basis. If you are in a relationship with someone and you're like, I don't know if I'm in a relationship with them. I was yesterday, but today I don't feel like it. Or you feel like you're coming together and going apart and coming together and going apart, whether it's just emotional and physical or, one or the other, you're basically talking about something that's not stable. And so there's an instability, and that is insecure attachment. It's not secure. I mean, secure means secure, right? Secure means this is here. This isn't going anywhere. You don't wake up in the morning going, oh my God, what's going to happen with my relationship today? That is insecure attachment. It's, I'm performing for another person. I'm trying to keep them. On the other hand, if I'm more avoidant, how can I get away from this person without breaking up with them? Because there's a part of me that wants them around. So there's a distancing that happens. In a healthy relationship, you don't have that. There's a flow. And it's not to say that you never want time alone or whatever, but you communicate, you talk about these things. You don't just abruptly do things that are going to upset somebody.
Mm-hmm. And I'm curious too, right? In romantic partnerships, intimate partnerships, do you see like people who in the beginning of a relationship, they feel like or at least they tell themselves they're being intimate and they're good at intimacy and being vulnerable and that kind of stuff. And then as time moves on in a relationship, they're in it for a long time. And then they just kind of shut down and don't open up intimacy again. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm. So a lot of times in the beginning of a relationship, there is not a strong sense of attachment. So at that point, right, I haven't established anything. It's still kind of fun. It's still kind of a mystery about what's going to happen here. So I can seem like I'm open and vulnerable because there's no loss. Like if this person walks away, who cares? Because this is just the beginning. Then when you have a stake in it, okay, two things happen. If you're the one who's more anxious, you're the one who's going to start performing more. You're going to be the one who's probably anxious all the time, wondering when this person's going to leave or if they're going to leave. The other one who's more avoidant, and maybe they were sharing in the beginning, they're like, okay, I'm not comfortable anymore. Now that there's a level of intimacy to them, which means I'm in this relationship, doesn't mean I'm being emotionally intimate, but I'm here. I can't, because there's a fear. I can't expose myself. I can't let you in. I can't let you see me in a certain way. And they may not know that that's what's operating. They may just know that they want to stay closed and that they're not interested in anybody coming closer, or this person coming closer to them.
Interesting dance, right?
Yeah, tiring.
Yeah. And so I'm also curious, right, how we can relate this to careers, right? So we're talking romantic partnerships. And I love that you also apply this to people's business life, career life. So how does insecure attachment make it hard for people in their careers?
There's a few different ways, because imposter syndrome is part of insecure attachment. I feel like I have to be somebody else to be successful, or I feel like I have to be somebody else to go up the ladder or to communicate with other people, especially if you don't trust how you make choices, or you don't trust how you, let's say, convey, something. Let's say you're a boss and you have to convey something. You may have trouble communicating that. And so what happens is you're always going to put distance between you and another person, like an avoidant, and other people who can't, there's like a workaholism, right? That I'm not going to get into, but there's workaholism. And what happens when it's related to insecure attachment is that that's a way of disappearing. That's a way of avoiding. That's a way of letting, your work sort of be your safe place. And so a lot of people that have avoidant tendencies tend to be workaholics too.
Right. Yes, that's a good point. That is very right. Very common. And I'm curious too, right? Like your title today is freedom from attachment. So what do you mean by that? What is freedom from attachment?
So how I tend to live my life is pretty much free from attachment. Not altogether, but pretty close. And what that means is not to be attached to results, not to be attached to what you don't control. Because when you're attached to things you don't control and you feel like, oh my God, this has got to work out how I need it to work out, you're tortured, you're suffering. You're feeling like, if this doesn't work out, my life could be over, metaphorically or literally for some people, right? And, on the other hand, when you're talking about, this whole idea of the self, we don't really realize that we're okay just inside of ourselves. Like, we're okay. We don't need anything. Obviously, you need to eat, you need your basic needs, but you're actually okay. So if you're not attached to how something turns out, or another person, or a specific job, or anything in specificity, yeah, that's always a fun word. You will find that you have a lot more freedom, because you can create, you can build, you can love, you can connect, but it's without forcing your will upon anything.
Mm-hmm. And how does that differ? How does freedom from attachment as a whole differ from secure attachment?
So to me, secure attachment and freedom from attachment, like I look at my life, right?